swamp that comes up through here. There's a dike that goes across it right
Oh
there.
yeah.
That's that swamp and more.
Oh boy. All right, here we go. First time with the new camera. Better than a GoPro, I hope. Let this be a cool shot down the train tracks. I'm in the deep south of the US. I actually love it down here. Some good friends, met some new friends. My friend Richard, here's a funny story. A friend of mine I've known for a handful of years, a bunch of years now. Real good guy. And I guess he was out turkey hunting on the property with his friend. And he said his friend, they phoned me a while back, said, yeah, my buddy of mine was showing me this guy on YouTube and showed me the channel. He's like, yeah, let me have a look. And as he's telling my friend about this guy on this YouTube channel, my buddy texted me and called me. And his friend couldn't believe that we were friends. Random, right? So that was pretty cool. So Good friend Richard, he's from down here and he's an avid follower of the channel. And we've all been running around the swamps and the bush here, the forest, checking out their hunting property and their hunting camp. Chasing turkeys, going to do some wild boar hunting and stuff, and meeting new people, seeing old friends. It's really a good place to be. And I got so many emails. So many. So I thought, what the heck? The train tracks sure be a fun place to do this. Maybe you'll see some wildlife cross behind me. I don't know. Hopefully this is in focus. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm sure it's in focus on something. Now, as usual, had a few hours sleep. Went out chasing turkeys this morning. Seen a handful. I'll probably share some of the video I've taken with the GoPro on this video and share with you what I see. Now listen to this. This is titled 1 in a Million ? I've been watching for a long time. Been trying to send this for years. So here we go again. This is a book, so hold on. 2010 October, I think. I was returning from Dalhart to Greenville, Texas. I'd been repairing some cranes for the company I worked for. It was just before dark. In the orange, or just before, outside of Henrietta, going south. I had to piss. I knew of a creek that had 2 bridges in a long S-curve. Had room to take a leak. As I was crossing the first bridge, the preferred spot, so slowing from posted speed, about middle of the bridge, I heard pigs squealing in terror very loudly. It came from the left side of the bridge in the creek bottom. I glanced that way and saw a large number of hogs all clustered together in a knot, ribbing and squealing like hell. I noticed that down the creek they had 3 huge boars in a defensive formation, a really big boar on point and 2 in flank position. Same thing up at the creek end of herd, facing to the right side of the bridge. The point boar was very large, about 600 pounds at least. Wow, that is freaking huge. Huge tusks. He was pawing the ground and snapping his teeth aggressively. I glanced to the right, creek bottom, and there's a black VW Beetle. Early 70s or late 60s model, sand halfway up the tires, looked like it had been there for years, except the paint was excellent. I was thinking as I glanced back to my left, no way. The big boar really pawing the ground and jumping in the air, snapping its teeth. No way I've noticed that VW before now, because I'd been through here 100 times. Turning head back to the right, the VW stood up in a 4-point stance, like a football lineman or a track runner, and I swear it was spinning its arms and legs, throwing sand to pack it. I think it was just moving so fast it appeared that way. As it was satisfied with the result, it set up in the stance with piles of sand behind each hand and foot. As I passed it, it bared its teeth at me, blue eyes and a Cheshire cat smile the size of a truck tire. I got the image in my mind at the moment of the creature holding me by the legs, kicking and screaming as it swallowed me head first without having to chew or bite. I thought, F this. I'll go to the next bridge a mile or so away, still needing to piss badly. I drove onto the next bridge, crossed and turned, and whoopee. I drove onto the next bridge, crossed and turned on whoopee. Lights just installed on the truck to escort oversized loads. They were very radical and attention-getting, to say the least. I pulled over in such a way that the front tires were on the paved shoulder and rear in the grassy ditch. Not knowing how much rain they had gotten, if any, I switched the 4-wheel high switch on, parked, closed the door, but didn't latch it. Went to the passenger rear to pee. As I began relieving myself, I heard what sounded like an armadillo rustling along the fence line a few yards away, towards the bridge. The fence was about 10 feet from me on my left. Then the rustling was limbs breaking, then rustling, getting closer until it sounded like a bulldozer charging up and stopped at the fence in the darkness. The only thing I could think of being that big would be I pissed off a big bull in the creek with the lights. I said out loud, "Oh no you didn't." I noticed in the light there was a chunk of steel belt off a blowout, wadded up, kind in the shape of an NFL football, only a little bigger. So I scooped it with my foot and kick-tossed it between the second and third wire of the fence, thinking it would hit a cow about the breast at its front legs. The hulking outline could have been a large Santa Gertrude's bull, 2 or 3 feet taller than the top wire of the 5-wire fence. I did what you do when confronted by something bigger. I got bigger and said, "Go on, get out of here." I heard it stumble back and said out loud, and chuckling, I said, "Scared the shit out of you." At the word "you," I was spinning on my heel to relieve myself. Dick still out. I felt wind pass my face. An explosion. The truck lifted off the tires on my side, ears ringing, dust flying, loud buzzing getting louder. I thought, F, not a good place for a blowout. I thought a tire blew. I could see the tire was fine, but the side of the truck looked like it had been hit with a cannonball. Above the wheel, well, the whole side was caved in. What the F? At the buzzing noise, my mind went into countdown mode, 1, 1000, 1, and so on, all happening simultaneously. I turned toward the buzzing sound, arguing in my mind, it's got to be 2 or 3 seconds past, mentally. For some reason I was thinking, Bouncing Betty. Bouncing Betty, that's one of those bombs that skip across the top of the ocean, right? Sorry. So yeah, I got 4 seconds. Shit, no way to get safe distance. About that thought, I saw what was buzzing. The chunk of tire belting was spinning like a top extremely fast and pulling the waist-high grass out by the roots and growing in size but not slowing much. That's when my mind realized it threw it at me. My feet took off without telling me to. You know, them old cartoons, someone would get scared and their body would stretch out because their feet took off so fast the torso couldn't keep up. Literally, that's how I felt. I remember thinking, I better catch up. I don't know if it was me screaming or it, but I made it to the driver's seat, dropped in and nailed it. The truck was creeping sideways slowly. I looked out the speedo, 98 miles per hour. Shit, the thought crossed my mind. Let off the gas a little bit and the front end will engage. I did, and it did. A loud boom and metal breaking, and the truck lurched into the other side of the road ditch. I got it straight and made it home. That following Monday morning had to make insurance report directly to the agent because my boss thought it was funny until the agent told us and showed us the 20-inch handprint on the tailgate that it nearly ripped off. $4,800 in damage. All right, this one's a little confusing for me to read, but I'm not quite certain what exactly went down there. Something hit your truck. All right, next. And then that was the end of the email. Here's the next one. Steve had to take a break. The insurance agent showed us the tailgate. Passenger side was ripped out. Securement bolts heard off of latch and bent tailgate and crushed corner. That's where the handprint was. 4 18-inch fingers inside the tailgate, 21-inch thumb outside the tailgate. The MFer held the truck in place. Its intent was to eat me. If the belting had struck my head, it would have decapitated me. It had the body mass of a VW bug. A few years later, me and my girlfriend was returning home, coming through the area at noon, decided to check out the area. The creek snaked its way past the place. I stopped and run right up against the fence. Creek, about 6 foot deep, make the creature around 13 to 14 feet tall. It had ran up the zigzag creek equivalent of about 3 miles in a matter of seconds. Thus the small, then large movements through the creek up to the fence. Since this experience, I carry a .45 ACP locked and loaded with 1350 feet per second hollow point load because I want to stop what I'm shooting, not shoot through it and wound it, like what a ball round will do. I am convinced that if one of them wants you, not much you're going to be able to do about it. They move unbelievably fast. Be prepared and aware. See it first. All right, gotcha, man. That was a little confusing because I'm not quite sure exactly what you're describing. You said a Volkswagen Bug, sand going up. Let me read that part again. The hulking outline could have been a large Santa Gertrude's bull, 2 to 3 feet taller than the top wire 5-wire fence. I did what you do when confronted by something bigger. I got bigger and said, "Get out of here." Heard it stumble back and said out loud and chuckling, said, "I scared the shit out of you." At the word you, I was spinning on my heel. All right, anyways, I read exactly what you typed to us, man, all right? So if you could, possibly please, could you email me again with a detailed description of what it was you saw? Okay, man? Feet, hands, eyes, nose, like a detailed, this is what I saw, because that was a little confusing for me. We're not all the best storytellers in type at most times anyway, right? So, but what I'm picking up is you saw something freaking terrifying. So if you could, email us back again if you could, and give us a detailed description of exactly what this thing was you saw, right? That sounds kind of a little scary. There's another one titled Southern Creatures. Hey Steve, really appreciate what you're doing. I've had 3 encounters over the years, but the most recent involved my oldest son's first hunt and left me much more concerned than the previous times that I blew off and put out of my mind. I've been in the fire service for over 20 years and a medic for half as long. I've never obsessed over conspiracy crap, but I've always been a realist, knowing we know very little of what truly goes on. I have 3 sons, with a 4th on the way. I look forward to sharing my love of the outdoors with all of them. I don't think you'll be compelled to relate any of this on your channel, but if you do, maybe leave out my personal details. No problem. But don't share them. Anybody out there, don't share your personal details if you don't want to share it, all right? I've hunted and fished in Louisiana all my life. I'm not super motivated to tell my stories, but simply wanted to say, don't forget about your southern brothers. We have them down here too. Ours tend to be smaller. It stands to reason as most of our predators are smaller. Large animals do not survive the swamps for long. I typed this out the first time and it turned into a dissertation. So I deleted all that and tried to keep it brief. I saw it on my first encounter while squirrel hunting as a teen with an iron sight 22 long rifle. It was walking into a clearing about 70 to 80 yards from me, saw me, then jumped back into the tree line and crouched. I even shot in its direction, not at it, hoping to spook it off. That didn't work, and it didn't move out of its crouched position until I tried to flank it to get back to my truck. It stalked me through the swamp all the way out in the quickly ascending darkness. Pretty scary. It was thinner built than the stories you hear of the northern ones. A juvenile, perhaps? Years later, in a management area to the west, one screamed at me at around 4 a.m. down a deserted oil well road on the way to make a hog hunt. It scared the ever-living shit out of me. It was like nothing I've ever heard and totally unlike any wildlife we have. I'm quite familiar with the natural sounds. That scream cut through me and shook me to my very core. It could not have been any more than 15 yards from me in the total darkness. I couldn't get out of there quick enough. It was no cat or owl. It sounded unworldly. Most recently, and the reason I went looking for information and found your channel, was at a management area in the upper northwest corner of the state. My son and I apparently interrupted one of them hunting a deer itself when we went scouting for the following several days whitetail hunting. It flanked around us and knocked on a tree from about 30 to 40 yards away in a thicket along a creek for a while. It then crossed the creek and made its way off along the creek. I say we interrupted it because we saw plenty of deer signs and spooked a doe right as I became aware of it without truly being aware what it was. The following morning we returned to the area and were met with an incredible pungent equine-like urine smell still in the air. There's no doubt it was close, but as we made our way through the darkness, as I had a tremendous sense of danger and being watched, I expected to happen upon another hunter as an explanation, but never saw any sign of any others. We never saw any deer or hogs either, despite the area clearly being full of game tracks. It was a sort of funnel between the creek and a swampy area that was open with nut-bearing hardwoods and ferns. No train coming. It's all right. After we settled into a ground blind and the woods came to life with the usual sounds, the knocking started again and the woods went dead quiet. It was coming from the thicket approximately 50 yards behind us and downwind across the creek. After the knocking ceased and it moved away, the woods came back to life. Again, I still wasn't admitting to myself what it was until after getting back a few days later and really turning it over in my mind. I feel like we dodged a bullet. There was no beaver tail slapping the water. It sounded like hardwood on wood and was almost rhythmic and slow. I've turned those extra senses back on again in the woods and really have a hard time not being a bit consumed with that concern, especially as the prospect of bringing my kids into the woods becomes more common. I wish I never had those experiences. Ignorance is a lot easier. Yeah, isn't it? But then again, wouldn't you want to know? I can't see these things as anything other than apex predators. The people out there trying to make contact and gifting, i.e. being a food source, have no concept of the danger they're inviting. Those same people probably think wolves rebuilt Yellowstone and are magical, friendly animals. Keep educating them. P.S. I dream of hunting your part of the world, but could never afford it. I'm envious of that amazing landscape and wildlife, except for, well, you know. P.P.S. I know there is genetic work out there, and I'm a very religious man. I don't believe Bigfoot is part human, and put a lot of stock in the journal of Dr. H.A. Miller until it's proven false/fake. That said, facts are facts and feelings don't matter, so we need to keep, asking the question. Regards and thank you. Got you, man. I'll keep your name out of it. Once you know, you know. I couldn't imagine having young boys, children with me and splitting up hunting. Myself, I think I'd be overtaken with a bunch of anxiety, concern myself. Depending where I was in the history of what's going on around there, I don't know. But you're right, we've got to keep asking the questions, right? We heard some pretty goofy noises last night coming out of the woods. What was the sound of, what Richard said, it was a large boar hog bellowing, what they do when they're looking for a mate. And I'll tell you what, if you didn't know there was hogs there and you heard that sound, it would have scared the shit out of you. I'm familiar with hogs, though. And then this morning, Richard said, we kept hearing one odd sound off in the back 40 there. He said he kept on saying, what is that? Like, what is that? I'm like, I don't know. It wasn't a clear whoop or anything. It's just another sound. We'll see if anything comes up in the next few days. I'm not anticipating bumping into anything here, but like Richard said, if they're down here, they're here where we are. So we'll see, whatever. And then another friend of mine, remember I was talking about a while back saying how there are some minds out there that just don't want to entertain the possibility of the shit going down. They don't want to. And I do believe firmly that reason is because they don't want their world destroyed, especially when they're passionate outdoors people. Like a friend of mine down here, he doesn't have too much time for the subject, and I believe that he just does not want to accept it and doesn't want to have to deal with it and doesn't want it to ruin his time because he loves being out in the woods, and they've got thousands of acres here. It's remote, it's full of hogs, gators, deer, turkeys. I'll be showing you guys a lot of that later. Maybe even today, we'll see. It's getting hot right here in the sun. I might travel down and find a shady spot, show you some swamp or something maybe in a minute. We'll see how it goes here. Hope this camera's working out all right. All right, here's another one. It's titled Another Story. In 1967, I was 10 years old. and had gone trapping with my grandfather on the Groundhog River in Northern Ontario. He'd built a couple cabins along the river to serve as stopovers as he made his rounds. We arrived at the cabin, which was deepest in the bush, to find our cabin completely ransacked by what we, at least I thought, not having heard of Sasquatch at this time, were bears. For years I put up the strange things I saw that day as merely the incredible abilities of a hungry and curious bear. But today, armed with the knowledge of Sasquatch, in retrospect, it could only have been a Sasquatch. I should have guessed by the puzzled look on my the awkward silence from my grandfather that this was no ordinary bear B&E. Number one, the door had been ripped off and was found in a clearing a couple of 100 yards down the trail. Number two, the wood stove, a cook stove, which took 3 men to move, was found 500 feet up the trail. What was even stranger is that there were no drag marks anywhere between where it originally sat and the clearing where it was found. Every jar lid, every container, every box had been opened. A case of wooden matches with 20 smaller boxes in it had been opened, and every little box had also been opened. The 2 cot beds were never found, mattresses and all. Fortunately, the bunks had been left intact. One of the windows had a loose steel mesh over it, with the squares being approximately 1 inch. It looked as if something had put its hand or paw in it and squeezed all the metal to the center. The list goes on. Things a bear could never do, but I was too young to realize. I never thought to look for tracks, but I'm certain my grandfather did, being a master woodsman, which is probably why I didn't mention it. That was the last year my grandfather trapped. Often wondered if it was because of the encounter or simply old age. Probably encounter. Another interesting story, one I'm certain you have never heard. In 1994, I was working in a healing center in Australia, where they often had shamans, psychics, come and do presentations, etc. A woman psychic had come as a part of her presentation. She had asked a couple of the staff to put some pictures in unmarked envelopes so she could guess what they were. As one of the pictures, I put a sketch of a Bigfoot. That evening, as she successfully guessed her way through the envelopes, came to my envelope. Immediately, her face went completely deadpan. Dropping the envelope on the floor, she said in a terrified voice, "Someone must stop these things. They are working with the ETs and disappearing people." She was very upset and refused to touch that envelope again. Sure enough, it was my Bigfoot pick. Make of it what you may. My name is Dan. Dan, I think I read this years back, didn't I? That's a very, very interesting email, though, is it not? Very alarming. Very alarming. And the psychic thing, too, right? Remember we had the Cujo, emailed us about talking to that psychic in San Francisco or San Diego. One of the other two. Apparently a lot of these people do have legitimate skills, right? That's pretty alarming. That's pretty alarming. If that woman was legit, and that was her automatic reaction to seeing that, that's a little unnerving as you try to put your puzzle pieces together, right? A little unnerving. Man, this sun is going to cook me right here. Let's keep this going. This is titled, is an older one too. I went back in a folder I've got in one of my inboxes. Hi Steve, first let me say that I really enjoy your site. I have a rabid curiosity about these beings and you help scratch that itch. I've never seen a Sasquatch, but I've had some interesting things happen over the years. I'm 73 years old and lived many of those years in the Rocky Mountains of western Wyoming, where I hunted more than I probably should have and got big game each fall. My first real knowledge of these things came from information shared with me by a buddy of mine from reservation land near Winchester, Wisconsin. We were serving in the wilds of South Vietnam at the time. I don't remember all the details anymore, but what I do remember was that he and his grandfather were hunting in the backwoods when they heard a loud and strange call coming from the timber not far from them. His grandfather took him by the arm, led him away toward the truck in haste, telling him that anytime he heard that noise, they needed to get out of the woods fast. He didn't tell me much more than that, and I was too young and dumb to ask questions. From the sound of that story, it was the Sasquatch incident. While in Vietnam, we lived in a pretty rough existence in pretty wild country. One bright moonlit night, I was standing watch. I heard perimeter wire, concertina wire, rattling, like it was being shaken by something. Of course, I imagined it must be enemy troops coming to attack us. My guys were sleeping behind me about 10 or 15 feet away, and I was sitting alone on a bunker. I could only hear and not see. So, erring on the side of caution and being scared to death, I pulled the pin on a hand grenade and tossed it toward the noise. Here sounds like a train coming. Let me know if there's one coming, will you? When the frag went off, there was a sound like a chimpanzee might make that went racing around the perimeter and out of hearing. To my knowledge, there were no nocturnal apes over there, and certainly none that were out and about at night. There were stories of rock apes, but the ones I saw were in the trees and not very big. One story went that a Marine was on watch in his fighting hole one night and fell asleep. He woke up to a big ape beating the snot out of him. It sure couldn't have been what I knew as a rock ape. On another occasion, I was walking on patrol and was tail end Charlie, last man in line. The closest Marine was 20 yards ahead of me. While taking a short break, something heavy hit the ground within a few feet of me in the brush. I thought a hand grenade had been thrown at me, but there was no explosion. We moved on before I could investigate. Thinking about it, fits the MO of Sasquatch with its rock-throwing habit. On a recent trip into the mountains where I used to live, I was off hunting marmots in a place I'd been to hundreds of times before. I took a short break and looked over the trail ahead of me. It rose up through the rocks in Aspen and over the crest of the rise about 100 yards away. I was overcome by a serious foreboding. My instincts were telling me not to go over that hill. I learned a long time ago to listen to that little voice in my head and didn't go there. I'll always wonder what was over there. As you've said, listen to your instincts. Listen to your instincts, damn right. That's about it, brother. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your nose in the wind, and keep fighting the good fight. Maybe one day we'll have some honest answers about these things. That is a familiar email too, and I don't mind reading that one again at all. There's only been, a couple 100,000 new people here since the original emails, and yep, the emails inboxes are a little out of sorts, and there's nothing I can do about it. Not my fault. Anyway, I'm gonna see if I can't just move up the road a little more and go somewhere else. I got the glare coming up the track. Well, hold on, let's see. That's gotta be a train coming. Got to be a train coming. I'm just going to move now. I'll be back in a minute. All right. Nice and shady right here. Who knows, might see a big gobbler come up behind me or some hogs or something. You never know. Now this is titled, this is newer. Recent, hot off the press, encounter caused missing time. It's title of this email. Now, the mosquitoes this morning were absolutely crazy. Okay. Hi, Steve. Hope you and Sarah and family doing great. I just want to thank you for being a true man and helping your community. I've been that hungry kid who needed help. Anyway, on to my story. You can call me JW. Appreciate the kind words, man. I'll begin with the setting. My grandparents bought nearly 100 acres in the North Georgia Appalachian Mountains in a small town called Hiawassee. The property and surrounding parcels were all untouched wilderness. There's some lodging down in the 18-somethings, but for over 150 years it was untouched. The land was the whole front of a horseshoe-shaped mountain, and the back of the mountain was national forest. This resulted in thousands of square acres of forest. When I was 7, we were forced to live in the 100-year-old cabin. I loved playing in the woods with my trusty BB gun and faithful hound Finnegan. I have vague memories of the dog barking and pulling me out of areas by my sleeve of my coat. But I had a blast playing and living in the woods around the cabin. We left 3 years later after the blizzard of '93. Eventually my grandparents retired to the property, and not getting along with my bipolar father, I moved in with them. I had a few experiences of getting pebbles thrown at me and sudden feelings of terror making me flee back to the cabin. One fall, my grandparents left me alone for a few weeks at the cabin. They went down to Florida to settle in the estate of my family friend. I never got creeped out in the cabin before that time. On day 3, I grabbed a random book off the shelf and read Stephen King's Salem's Lot in one sitting. I looked up to realize it had gotten dark. I went through the house, closing the windows and doors as it had gotten chilly, and the book was working on my imagination, or so I thought. The bedroom I was in had 2 windows, one facing the front porch and one facing the garage roof. Popped a video in the VCR, trying to distract myself from the imaginary vampires, and after getting into the movie and forgetting my panic, I was drifting off, and then boom! It sounded like an elephant had landed on the garage roof. I assumed it was a falling branch or something until I heard the telltale creaks and squeaks of someone walking on the roof of the garage. I was in my room when I said roof. I was in my room when said roof was replaced, and it sounded the same as when the roofers were walking along the pitched roof and hanging new shingles. I was confused and thought, it must be a burglar. I was so confused as to why someone would come up half a mile drive on foot to rob someplace, as I had not heard a car. I love the noises down here. They're so different than at home. Sorry. I was confused and thought must be a burglar. I was so confused as to why someone would come up a half-mile drive on foot to rob someplace, as I had not heard a car, and in those days all the cars were gas or diesel, no electrics, so could be heard driving up easily. I grabbed a hatchet and a sword from my collection and then approached the window. Viking mode. I used the point of the sword to move the curtain aside and saw nothing. I felt my hair stand on end, like I was being watched. I turned away from that window and toward my door, and that's when I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned and looked out the window, then looked out onto the front porch and driveway. The entire window was taken up by a large, white-haired head. It looked very human, but distorted, more primitive. The mouth was huge and hanging open a little. The mouth was huge and hanging open a little. I saw large square teeth. The thing's skin was ashy gray. I froze, feeling waves of dread and terror. I ran to my closet. Let me explain the closet. It was a little hallway with a rack for hanging clothes. At one end it opened into my room, and the other end it opened to my grandparents' room. I went to my grandparents' room. They had a window that looked out onto the garage as well, and I looked and I saw what looked like shadows walking along the roof, all black, vaguely humanoid in shape, but looked like wavy, like heat distortion on a highway on a hot day. Then the next thing I know, I wake up to the sun hitting my face. I was on the front porch. Last I remembered was seeing the shadowy things on the roof. I was trying to tell myself it was a weird nightmare. I got up, looked to the window that faced my room. It was open, and the dirt and dust that was on the porch was disturbed underneath. I was relatively clean, except my feet were covered in the local orange clay like I had been walking outside. I had 4 more days until the grandparents were due to return, and I don't remember those days. I remember the day I woke up on the porch. I remember cooking dinner that night, and then there's a blank until I remember waking up from a nap to the sound of my grandparents driving up the road. I must have eaten and drank because the groceries were used up, but I don't remember any of that. I don't even remember going to bed the night after the encounter when I awoke on the porch. Here's my story. Take it or leave it. Hopefully the grammar wasn't too bad, and sorry for missing any information. I wrote all I could remember. If you have any questions, feel free to email me back. Ugh, that's creepier than shit. That's creepy, man. There's the thought of something scary is bad enough, but then the thought of something being able to manipulate our brains to retaining thought or not. That's some kind of power, isn't it? That's a little creepy. A little creepy. But anyway, there you go. I'm going to be a little more organized later, but I think I'm working on about 3 hours sleep right now. Travel like crazy. And my friends are busy this afternoon, so I take advantage of those moments and I go nap because they are going to be relentless. They're going to take me out at nighttime, looking for hogs at sea in the crazy swamp wildlife, hunting in the mornings for turkey this afternoon, putting turkeys to bed in the evening. It's non-stop. It's a lot of fun, but I really need to catch up some sleep, so I'll cut this short. And at the end here now, I'm not sharing any more emails for those of you that don't want to hear or see anything else, but I'll see if I can't throw some of the video clips I recorded wearing a GoPro on my chest in the last day and morning and night. Probably find it interesting. Anyway, here we go. Day 1 of my adventure shared. We'll be back shortly.
That's a different one, isn't it?